Wild residents of Midwest City initially met last night in the home of Councilwoman Dorothy Zachary. They were upset over letters they received from Councilman Paul Pherigo. Quite simply, the letter sent by Pherigo is a plea for help. He says he's losing it all: his business, his income, and his wife. He asked for financial help. But in another letter sent in the same envelope, Pherigo asked for political help. He endorses David Herbert for mayor. The letters have raised some questions with some residents. Action 4 tried to contact Councilman Pherigo about those concerns, but he could not be reached at his home or by phone. Candidate Herbert says Pherigo's intentions were good, but his judgment wasn't.
The letter that he sent asking for money was in poor taste. I don't think that had I known that there was going to be a plea for financial help in there that I would have gone along with it. I don't think I would have. I assumed from the beginning that it was simply going to be an explanation of the problems that he'd faced in the past.
Herbert's opposition, Bob Harris, says the letters asking for help have helped no one but him.
I would say that it probably will help me. I would not have had a letter like that go out in my campaign. By no means would I have let it gotten by our people.
The residents of Midwest City will decide tomorrow who will next hold their office of mayor. Whether the voters pull the lever for Harris or for Herbert may not depend so much upon the candidates themselves, but rather on the letter sent by Councilman Paul Pherigo. Only Mr. Pherigo knows the true intention of his letter, but tomorrow voters may indicate whether or not they feel the letter was a political ploy or a plea. Debbie Mash, Action 4 in Midwest City.
It was a frightful day, January 19th, when 7 people lost their lives in a water heater explosion at Starr Elementary School. The 250 kindergarten through 4th grade students were transferred to Rogers Middle School. The school board conducted a survey to find out if parents wanted their children to stay there, be put someplace else, or move back to Starr. The decision: reopen Starr in the fall.
I think it's home. I think, too, even though we've made the best of our relocation at Rogers, we have the annexes, that's separate. There are no halls dividing, and there have been some discomforts connected with the relocation.
But some of the parents of the children who went here don't want the school to reopen. They say the children have too many bad memories of what happened here on January the 19th. Edith Johnston's 10-year-old daughter Carol suffered a blood clot in the explosion and was the last one to leave the hospital. Mrs. Johnson says her daughter does not want to go back to Starr, and she feels the school should be rebuilt from the ground up.
I think there's too many bad memories there, and I don't think the kids can make themselves go into a building where something drastically has happened that with little kids, that had gotten, killed and didn't make it. I just don't think they can do it myself. I don't think my little girl can, because she's made a statement several times that she never would go back to that school.
Mrs. Johnston hopes this summer will fade some of her daughter's memories. Classes start August 30th. Bella Shaw, Action 4 in Midwest City.
If the Russians, or anyone else for that matter, suddenly decided on the spur of the moment to send some nuclear missiles our way, there wouldn't be much time to take cover.
The sign says exactly what it means: a fallout shelter. It wouldn't do you any good anywhere near a nuclear blast, which is exactly where this one is, being within half a mile of Tinker Air Force Base.
Tinker has always been what civil defense officials call a high-risk area, but its status has changed since the arrival of the AWACS radar jets. Now it's called a counter-force target. That means it's moved up a notch on the Russians' hit list in the event of nuclear war. There are several places in Oklahoma where you don't want to be if that happens. All of the military installations, of course. You don't want to be near them, obviously, because you could die. Everyone living within 1 mile of ground zero will be killed, shelter or not. Within 3 miles, your chances of surviving increase dramatically to a whopping 2%. Within 5 miles, you have a 50-50 chance, and at 8 miles, you only have a 5% chance of getting killed. From 8 to 13 miles, nobody dies, but you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting hurt. If you pay attention to world events, you shouldn't be near one of those areas when it happens. The National Civil Defense Office says we will have at least a week's warning before missiles start raining on us. The Soviet Union will be evacuating their cities, and when they do that, we'll start doing the same thing.
The plans are that we could evacuate Oklahoma City within 3 days. I see no reason why we couldn't do that.
The plan is the Crisis Relocation Plan. It calls for everyone in the metro area to move out into low-risk counties. Major and minor routes would be made one-way exits. It's the same kind of plan that would be used across the country. With it, officials hope to save as much as 80% of the population.
Certainly the federal government's telling us that we can expect to save 80%. I hope we can.
You think so?
Do I think so? No. I really don't.
What would be more realistic?
I hope that we can evacuate 80%.
All lanes of the highway will be pointing in the same direction, away from the danger zone. And all the rules of the road, like the cars that stall along the way, will be shoved aside. And for 27 hours, everybody will have the same purpose: get out. But once you get out, how will you survive once Oklahoma City becomes a dust pile? More on that tomorrow. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Midwest City. One or two of these blasts would make something as awesome as the Mount St. Helens eruption look like a firecracker. The devastation would be similar, though. Nothing left standing in the immediate area, and not much left of the land to live off of. Radiation would be a problem at first, but well outside the blast area, officials agree it wouldn't be a threat to immediate survival. If everything goes as planned, most of the population of Oklahoma City, like the rest of the people in the U.S., will be out in rural areas, relatively safe. What they would have to worry about is eating. Civil defense plans call for evacuees to take along their own basic survival gear, including enough food to last them at least 3 days. Just about everyone agrees on what you should take: clothing, flashlights, battery-operated radios, food. Where disagreement really gets going is when you start talking about how long you'll need it.
People say, what can I do? And I say, you can learn to take care of yourself and your loved ones for 3 days. That's what you can do. You can learn how to get drinking water, how to get food, how to survive for 3 days. But you must realize that in case of a disaster, help may be slow coming.
But a self-styled survivalist, who wants to keep his identity a secret, says he doesn't expect help to come for a very long time.
I think that the real horror of the event is going to be people who aren't prepared. They're going to panic. And I think law and order as such will break down. That is the scary part.
Being prepared is a big business these days. One supplier of military gear says his business has increased 3 times in as many years. He has everything you might need for the well-dressed survivor in the field.
You know, a guy could go crazy on this survivalist gear. You could spend anywhere from $50,000 to $5,000.
But in a real nuclear holocaust, a lot of this stuff just wouldn't be necessary. When you talk about surviving a nuclear war, you're talking about a game that probably no one will win. There's too much disagreement as to exactly what would happen if the United States and the Soviet Union fired all of their missiles at one another. The only way to really find out who will survive is if somebody presses the button. Ted Brown, Action 4.
It was open house at the Mary Mahoney Memorial Health Center, that is for politicians and the media, because the center wanted to make it known that they need financial help. The administration sent invitations to several state representatives, senators, and city councilmen, asking them to see for themselves what effect the budget cut will have.
Thank you, Vic.
The group was given a tour to get an idea of some of the services available now, like an in-house pharmacy, pediatric care, and dentistry. The most important function of a community health center was explained: preventive medicine. Patients here are taught to have regular checkups, like this one, and not to wait until you're in absolute pain before seeing the doctor. That message has been given to thousands of people a year in the Spencer area, but without federal funds, it will drop down to hundreds, which means a lot of people will go without.
That's what's going to happen. They're going to do without. They're going to do without until it becomes an emergency. And then somebody's going to have to take them to the hospital. That's what's going to happen.
So if the money isn't found by legislators or raised in fund drives, the center's staff and patients are in real trouble. But that's not all. The Mary Mahoney Memorial Health Center provides a staff for this Southeast Area Health Center. Because of the budget cuts, they're going to have to close this facility. And that means that the Southeast area won't have any community health services. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 in Southeast Oklahoma City.
The Oklahoma Panhandle has a desolate beauty and music all its own. Nearly everywhere you turn, there are frames from an old Hollywood Western. This was the Wild West, and the Hollywood magic is no match for the canvas of nature. Where the Wild West meets the here and now, the canvas can be a little torn. Gate, Oklahoma is like that, the sort of place that today seems to pass by. The 200 or so people left are fiercely proud of their claim to the Panhandle, but not so many years ago, no state would claim this land, and Gate became the baddest of the Badlands. The only law and order was a rope and a tree.
I know that there's 3 where they took them to that tree down there and lynched them out at that tree. Well, they'd usually kind of have a trial. Of course, they knew pretty well that they'd done it, and it wasn't too much of a trial because they knew they was convicted when they caught him at it. And they had this one man, had him up there on the barrel, had the rope around his neck and ready to kick the barrel out from under him. And the boss of the gang there said if there's anyone opposed to this lynching to step across the line there, he'd draw the line across in the sand there with his boot. And this Denise Maffitt, he stepped across the line, and so they turned him loose. And that is the last one that ever was tried at that tree.
The stories of the hanging tree may be tales, but the vigilantes are no legend. Some think they were wrong taking the law into their own hands that way, but others say they were just good men, trying to bring order to an orderless land.
These people are in the waiting room at the Dean McGee Eye Institute in Oklahoma City. Eye problems are common, but when you're over 50, senile macular degeneration is the most common disease. If not treated, people can become legally blind. But if caught early enough, their eyes can be treated with lasers. After all, the eye is particularly suited to the laser since the eye is designed to let light in. Two ophthalmologists here in town, Dr. C.P. Wilkinson and Dr. Wayne March, participated in a study conducted by the National Eye Institute. They found that lasers dramatically help people who exhibited early signs of this disease.
This is a breakthrough much as breakthroughs with certain drug improvements. We have shown that this therapy with this laser truly works, and we feel that there's a very definitely statistically significant difference in patients in whom treatment has been received as opposed to those who are left untreated.
The procedure only takes a few minutes and it doesn't hurt. 120,000 people can now be spared permanent visual impairment with this treatment. Dean McGee isn't the only place in town that has the lasers. In fact, lasers have been used in treatment of other diseases like diabetes. But keep in mind, the lasers are only useful in the disease's early stages, so early detection is very important. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Dean McGee Eye Institute.
Most of the cars on the Altus Air Force Base look like this morning, totally demolished after a tornado came through and wiped out half the base. The cars were a big concern, yes, but the planes were also a big concern. Many of the planes suffered some heavy damage. These cargo planes were all facing straight ahead in one direction before the tornado hit them. Work crews are spending hours trying to assess the damage. The twister forced grounded planes into each other and turned some aircraft completely around. Control towers, like many other buildings on the air base, had all its windows shattered. Somehow the towers managed to remain standing despite powerful winds. A base photographer braved the storm to take these pictures of the tornado. The photographs clearly show the narrow distance between the planes and one of the twisters. Base officials are confident the cargo planes will be back in good shape soon. Just on the other side of the base, barracks for 1,200 enlisted men and women were closed down because of damage. There were several injuries reported, but no fatalities. Officials say a temporary housing problem was solved in no time.
It wasn't too long. The National Guard Armory opened up. That was available, the gymnasium, the motels downtown, and local community opened up their own homes. No, that was, sure there was a problem, getting people there, the management of that, but no, that was taken care of.
Perhaps if any one spot on the base was hit hardest, it would have to be the service station. Here the tornado crushed half the building. Everything inside was buried under bricks and steel. Digging out belongings from under the debris was not going to be an easy task. Some employees were working inside the station when the tornado struck. They say escaping unharmed was nothing short of a miracle.
I never prayed so much in my life.
This was the only gas station on base. No one has determined how much it will cost to rebuild from all the destruction. People living here only hope they won't become another tornado target. Ed Stewart, Action 4 at the Altus Air Force Base.
Braniff Airlines was founded in the 1920s by brothers Tom and Paul Braniff as a one monoplane mail shuttle service between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Braniff grew to become Oklahoma City's largest passenger and freight carrier, handling between 25 and 30% of the air travelers in and out of Oklahoma City. But that proud history may be coming to an end, and the people who work for Braniff can't believe it.
We all just sat there and looked at each other. We went to the captain's room, and everybody got together and wondered what we were going to do now.
Witten and other Braniff crew members are still hoping that Braniff jets, like this one, will fly again. But they realize their flying careers may be over. Bill Ross, Action 4.
Ironically, trash cans are being used to rope off the damaged area. What's inside has truly become trash. That's probably hard for the owner of this truck to admit. The employee's vehicle was only one victim of the high winds. This truck was also hit, but barely damaged, except for the moped on the front end. It was this Oldsmobile that received the most damage. It used to be a hardtop. It's now a convertible. The three cars were all hit by one thing, an aluminum roof. High winds tore the roof off the side of this warehouse, throwing half of it on the front of the building, the other half in the parking lot. Fortunately, the warehouse was used to store cargo pallets, so no one was inside when it happened. Tinker Air Force Base officials say this pile of mangled aluminum and broken beams represents more than $20,000 in damage. They're not sure how and when they're going to repair the roof. First, contractors will have to decide what work needs to be done. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at Tinker Air Force Base.
Several square miles of valuable residential and business properties in Wichita Falls are flooded in more than 5 feet of water today. The heavy rains began about sundown last night, leaving hundreds of motorists stranded on city streets. Emergency rescue teams have evacuated more than 250 people from homes and apartments. Police were kept busy throughout the night patrolling disaster areas to prevent looting. Though only minor injuries are reported, authorities estimate the property damage as severe.
Certainly going to run into the millions, many millions of dollars. We have water that got into some very, very nice homes, and I don't know how many thousand homes have been flooded.
The Red Cross has set up 3 relief shelters for disaster victims in the city. Many families are without food and clothing today. The Red Cross will continue emergency relief until the victims can return to their flood-stricken homes. Carol Lambert for NBC News in Wichita Falls, Texas.
Imagine flying a Braniff jet, like this one, to Hawaii for a dream vacation. Sounds great. Well, it sounded great 2 months ago when this man and his wife made reservations through a travel agency for their 40th anniversary trip. But unless they get another airline to honor their tickets on a standby basis, their dream will become a nightmare.
According to the agencies, they said they got to protect their interests first, and said they could book us on some other airlines, but it cost another $750 to one way.
Travel by Ines, this is Valerie.
Phones at local travel agencies rang off the wall all day Thursday. Here at Travel by Ines, agents answered about 4,000 calls, twice as many as normal. All the callers had reservations with Braniff.
We advise them what to do. If they have a Braniff ticket and they want space on another airline, they can stand by at no additional cost. If they want guaranteed reservations, then they have to buy a ticket on that carrier.
Probably a lot of people holding Braniff tickets think Murphy's Law has taken over. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Bill Ross, Action 4 at Will Rogers World Airport.
anger is what brought Operation Dewey Canyon 4 into being. Anger over what these vets say is a steady pattern of neglect by each administration since Vietnam. According to Washington coordinator Mike Sutton from Norman, Oklahoma, Vietnam vets have received far fewer benefits than their predecessors from World War II and Korea.
But Reaganomics is the current problem. Before it was Carter, Ford, Nixon, but now it does happen to be Reagan, and the cutbacks in social services affect us all.
In this time of sharp budget cutting, these vets are in fact demanding better benefits, a stronger GI Bill, employment opportunities, counseling services, and most importantly, medical treatment for those affected by the chemical Agent Orange.
The war never ended for the Vietnam veteran. The emotional remembrances and the pain remains with the Vietnam veteran perhaps more than any other. This was due to a number of factors. Being so young when they were sent to war, going to a war that was so controversial, and returning home to something less than a welcome.
As Sutton and the others see it, this administration's priorities are in the wrong place. What is essential is not only more funds for Vietnam veterans, but also an assurance that there will be no more wars like Vietnam. Jane Peterson, Action 4, Washington.
It's a time when everyone is a winner, not just the sponsors, volunteers, coaches, and parents, or the Olympians themselves, all of us. We have a chance to reach out to someone, and the example set by the Olympians, overcoming great obstacles just to attain a goal, is an inspiration to those communities not having Special Olympics programs, and to those parents who still harbor their special children protectively at home. This is a time when we see self-confidence grow, and a time when society can be receptive to real humanness. Last month we saw Stephen Ingram preparing for these competitions. For the 1982 Special Olympics, he tied for third in a long jump and got his medal. Stephen is 9.
Did you do any practicing for the long jump?
Yes.
How much did you practice?
10 years.
Thousands of people from all across the state were at Tinker Air Force Base Saturday to have a look at the instruments of war that U.S. officials hope will keep us at peace. It was an opportunity for taxpayers to see and ask questions about the machinery their tax dollars buy. It was, in short, the Air Force's way of saying, let's get to know each other. But the highlight of the day wasn't United States machinery or U.S. air prowess. It was the Snowbirds across the Canadian border. The Snowbirds are the Canadian answer to the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. They don't fly that way during combat, but they do serve their purpose. That purpose is to develop a better relationship between the military and the man on the street. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 at Tinker Air Force Base.